Salvete omnes, this is Dr. Jones with the screencast for Caesar's De Bello Gallico, Book 6, Chapter 14. In this section, Caesar continues his discussion of the Gauls and their customs. Druides bello abesse consuerunt, neque tributa una cum reliquis pendunt. So we find out that the Druids are accustomed, consuerunt, that is a contraction for consuerunt, but the verb, even though it's formally perfect, really translates as a present tense. So they are accustomed ab esse a bello, so to be apart from war, to not take part in war. Neque, nor do they pendunt tributa, right? So literally, do they weigh out tribute or tax, meaning nor do they pay tax. Una cum reliquis, together with the others. Militiae vacationem omnium quae rerum habent immunitatem. So the verb there, habent, they have vacationem militiae, so basically exclusion from military service, quae, and immunitatem, immunity or exemption, omnium rerum, of all things. So if you are a Druid, you don't have to take part in war with the rest. You also are tax exempt. So these are some of the advantages of being a Druid, perhaps. Tantis excitati priemiis, so incited excitati by Tantis priemiis, by such great benefits or rewards. Multi, many, conveniunt in disciplinam, come into the practice, into the system, the system of learning. Et sua sponte, et a parentibus propinquisque mittuntur, both sua sponte, of their own accord, by their own free will, and they mittuntur, are sent by their parents and their relatives, right? So kind of like having a priest in your family among certain cultures, it is considered something of an honor if you have a person in your family who has made it through the ranks and actually succeeded in becoming a Druid. Magnum ibi numerum versuum ediscere dicuntur. So we find out if when they decide to go and join the Druids, well, what do you have to do? Well, they dicuntur, they are said to ediscere, to learn thoroughly. The A of ediscere is the thoroughly part. A magnum numerum versuum, a great number of verses. There's that fourth declension, genitive plural, ibi, there, right? So when they go to study, they are said to learn thoroughly, ediscere, a great number of verses. And so non nulli, right, some, several, many of them, permanent in disciplina, so remain in the training, in learning, annos vicanos, or 20 years, right? So you don't just sign up, right? 20 years it may take you to go through the ranks and have enough education in the sacred verses to actually become a Druid. Neque fas esse existimant ea literis mandare, nor do they consider it to be religiously okay, right? Fas, non-blasphemous, right? So, nor do they consider it to be proper that ea, these things, to mandare ea, to commit these things to letters or to writing, right? So these sacred verses they spend 20 years learning are not even written down, right? So this is an oral tradition that's passed down through the Druids. So nor do they consider it to be proper to commit these things to writings. Cum in reliquis fere rebus publicis privatisque rationibus Graecis litteris utantur. So it's not that they're illiterate. They actually do know how to write, but the sacred verses, they don't consider it proper to write down. So that cum is actually going to be a concessive cum, meaning although. So they don't write the sacred verses down, although in reliquis fere rebus, in practically all other matters, publicis privatisque rationibus, in public and in private accounts, utantur Graecis litteris. They use Greek letters. So if we remember in the siege of Cicero's camp, the letters going from Caesar to Cicero, Caesar makes a point of indicating that he wrote those in Greek so that if they were intercepted, they wouldn't be understood by the Gauls. Now, we shouldn't confuse the fact that the Druids actually used Greek letters with the idea that they could understand Greek, right? They only knew the alphabet, so any frat boy could pull off that trick, but they don't actually know the Greek language. However, they do write many things down, practically everything they can write down in their kind of normal business, but sacred verses, no. This utantur, remember utor takes the ablative, so graecis literis in the ablative. Id mihi duabus de causis instituisse videntur. So the mihi there is talking about Caesar. So they seem to me to have instituisse id, so to have set up this practice de duabus causis for two reasons. Because they neque volunt, they neither want their practice, their disciplinam, a feri in vulgum to be carried out among the common people, right? So it's very prestigious to be a Druid, and so they don't want just anybody getting a hold of that stuff. They want to control their knowledge very tightly, so because they neither want their practice to be carried out into the mob, the masses, nor do eos qui discunt, those who study, literis confisos, having put their trust in writing, in letters, are they less eager for memory, right? So the idea being that if you start writing stuff down, people having trusted in writing will not be as enthusiastic about the art of memory, right? Of actually preserving things perfectly in their memory, right? And he expands on this point to say that it's not just the Druids who feel this way, but this is an idea that we know goes back certainly in Plato's writing. Socrates himself hates books, right? This newfangled thing called writing. He doesn't like it because you can't talk with a book. You can't really get down to the truth with a book. It always just says the same thing. So Caesar expands here, right? This fear that if they write stuff down, the sacred verses, people will trust less in their writing. Quod fere plerisque accidit, which generally happens to most people. That praesidio literarum, so with a guard of letters, right? So with letters as a means of preservation of your knowledge, they give up their diligence in learning thoroughly and memory, right? So they give up their diligence and their memory, things which are very important to the Druids in preserving their sacred verses. In primis, hoc volunt persuadere. So this is their the primary tenet of their religious beliefs. So in primis, especially, they want to persuade this thing, that animas non interire, that souls do not die, but transire, they cross postmortem, after death, ab aliis ad alios, from some people unto other people, right? So the souls flit around among bodies, and once you die, your soul doesn't perish, but rather passes into a different body. Atque hoc maxime, and by this thing especially, they think that people are spurred to courage, metu mortis neglecta, with fear of death having been ignored, right? So if you're not worried about the death of your soul, if you die in battle, no problem. That soul will simply travel on to the next body, and you will have further chances for courage. So in battle, they're not afraid to die because they know their souls won't die. Multa praeterea de sideribus atque or motu de mundi acterar magnitudine de rerum natura de deorum immortalium vi ac potestate disputant et juventuti tradunt. So, moreover, they debate and hand down to their young people many things about the stars and their motion, about the size of the world and of lands, about literally the nature of things. This is what we would think of as kind of natural science, about the force and power of the immortal gods. So the Druids have interest in all aspects of knowledge. They preserve these things in their sacred verses, though of course they don't write them down, and we therefore have a pretty limited view of what they actually say. But anyway, that is the screencast for 6:14.